Hi,
And
Martha.
I just love to hear Elvis. Boy, his messages are so wonderful. When he sings about believing, boy, we can sure believe in the best today. Isn't that terrific that we can have happy beliefs and not the old hopelessness and helplessness we used to have? And I just love that song about peace. It's taken eons for people to realize that peace is inside and that it's possible no matter how crazy the world gets, we can have peace and we can have that comfort and contentedness even if other people around us are going a mile a minute. Isn't that good news? But I'm just so glad to be here tonight and so glad to see you, Nancy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
And glad Mac is here doing his job.
Thank you.
And I know that you're all eager to get some answers tonight. So I'm going to just leave for now, and I'll see you before we all go. So, toodaloo.
Lots of love.
Good evening.
Good evening,
Good
John.
evening.
Would it be all right if I get up and close the door?
Yes, that would be fine. And we're so glad that everybody's here tonight. Good evening, Nancy.
Good evening. Thank you.
And good evening, Matt.
Good evening.
And I just know that Nancy has some questions. I was eavesdropping. So, Nancy, if you want to get those questions out here, I'd be glad to answer them.
Certainly. Now, before we're born, we make these choices of the things that we want to do. And I'm wondering if I will be working, if I will have the ability to work with a trumpet.
Oh my, let me just take a minute, all right?
Yes.
Well, Nancy, you definitely have the ability, and you are definitely spiritually open. You have so many positive things working for you. But it is also necessary, one of the things that happened with David that was so helpful for you was sitting in a dark room with like-minded people. The energy is much higher. And sitting in his cabinet was even increased that. So it brought people into even a higher development stage. And as that happens, then if you have those opportunities to help continuing raising your energy, yes, you definitely have the ability. That is, I was eavesdropping, as I said, and I heard you mention going to camp, and they have a seance room. You've been there, I believe, for healing, and that's one, it's almost like David's cabinet. The energy there is a very conducive energy, and they do have development classes there going on, and you can sit in that room. And it's very beneficial because when Spirit works on you in that environment, it's very more profound than just the typical praying and meditating might be. So I really suggest that if you have opportunities, Marilyn's greatest gifts were not only sitting in David's basement and his cabinet, but for several years she was twice a week for 2 hours at a time in the seance room. And even though she was disappointed with some of the lessons in one of the classes, the being there was so invaluable to her growth, her spiritual growth. And that was like being in David's cabinet. So I suggest that if you have a possibility of building your own, you might find a closet that's totally dark you could use as a substitute at your house to put something across the bottom so the light doesn't come in from below. And practice in your own home. If you have no better other option, you would be by yourself, but you can invite Spirit to come in, and your entourage would be glad to be there and help you.
I've heard that before. Thank you very much for the answer. I've heard that word, the entourage, and I do find that amusing, really. So, I just believe that possibly I can do something in the future. And I've been having that feeling get stronger. And that's why I asked that question.
Well, you definitely have the ability. And when all the pieces come together, you will have all, it's not something that's maybe going to be like lightning from heaven, but you will be aware and it will fall together for you.
Thank you very much.
Well,
John,
you're so welcome.
I was thinking about maybe trying to do the same thing as you were suggesting for Nancy. the question I have, and I think it affects both of us, is if we do that, how would we be aware of if we make a connection, if anything came through? Because if we're in trance, would we be aware of what's happening?
Well, one of the things that has been suggested before is to set up a tape recorder to run while you're in trance, so if anything is said or spoken or transpires in sound, it will be picked up. That's been done before, and it's very practical. If you had larger groups of people, and sometimes you have in this room, this is a very special room too, and when we have more high-minded people, we can have the same effects as as David's basement. However, the more numbers, the higher energy we have, as you're probably well aware, and so the higher numbers would be able to make our transitioning into higher vibrations easier. And this room has some special energy of its own because of the way Marilyn got the room. It was donated to God, and God paid for this room to be used in His purposes. So this is not a bad place to be. It is just not as seasoned, as you might call it, as David's in the seance room, but you're seasoning it as you come and continue to work in spirit. And the book study will be another way to help season this room into higher vibrations and bringing that energy in. So those kinds of experiences, Nancy, the more you're connected with groups of people that are involved with this, that will be very beneficial to you.
Thank you. And then as far as my entourage, and I guess it's not an easy question to ask, who is a person who talks to me? When I ask questions, who is my guide who talks to me the most?
Well, they all have different voices and different vibrations, and so that when you say the most, you've identified that there are different ones.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yes.
All right, and some of them can be angels and some of them can be guides. And the ones that you hear primarily are your guide, is your guide. Let me have a moment. They're telling me that your guide is a male and his name is Paul. And he actually is a family deceased member. Did you have a Paul in your family history?
I cannot identify it.
All right, well possibly it was back in time in your family history, but he was a relative of yours. Let me see if he will tell me who. Your great-grandfather on your father's side. Does that sound familiar?
John J.
Oh, that's the name that he had, okay. Oh, he's saying that was his earth name, but this is his soul name.
Okay.
Okay, that's the same person. And he has been here with you for some time because he is he has the energy you need for your growing and growth, and he has the ability to help you with that. So he's very happy that you are listening and know that he's there, because he said it's a very close relationship the two of you have. And he's thrilled for that.
Thank you.
Yes. And he's wanting you to know what a good job you're doing, and he's very happy to be your guide. And he loves you very, very much.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you. And then as far as healing is what I'm always most interested in. Is it possible? I'm always very big for miracles. I am thinking big, I guess is the easiest way to put it. I hope to learn more about healing energies and work with healing doctors and do miracles. Is that unreasonable? I know it sounds pretty big.
All things are possible, Nancy. Don't limit yourself. No, that is not too big. However, you understand what miracles are. And it's the removing of fear so that the person comes into love. And that's the miracle. The ego has disappeared and no longer creating a survival mechanism so that the body is trying to protect itself from whatever abuse, emotional problems, situations that person is protected from, thinking if they stay in that predicament, they will be safe, and that's the ego's thought system. And when you have the skills and ability to see it for what it is that they are needing, they can walk out of that safety that is an illusion into the love of God, which is reality. The illnesses will leave. So many people have been damaged in different ways. Our society has done a very good job, thanks to the dark hats, of creating fear when there was never any fear in the first place. And people were, throughout ages, through inquisitions and crusades and various wars that were perpetrated to create fears, and all this fear-mongering that goes on in political parties today, and those kind of things help people to stay hidden in the darkness. And as people learn the truth, which is coming out more and more in spiritual circles and soon to be more revealed in the mainstream, and that is actually coming very soon, that more truths are going to be totally out there for people to see how they've been duped. But as you're helping people to understand their difficulties are something they can overcome, because in changing their attitude or their emotions, their mindsets, their belief systems, that no longer has an anchor to weigh them down to the dark energies that we call illness. Because all illness is just in the darkness, separated from God in one way or another. And when you can see the root causes of where those fears are coming from, and it is interesting that you're talking about this. This is exactly what we're talking about today in her book. She was just getting to the point where she was saying that all solutions are the same, even though the problems look different. And in being able to read people's past lives, being able to read their energy, being able to understand that they're coming into balance. So as you understand the dynamics of how a human being has been perpetuated with fear, guilt, shame, and if they didn't hear it from their family or society, or the lies that have been perpetuated in medicine and education, etc., and the shallow, limited thinking that has been predominant, so that they can come out into being open-minded, then you have the ability to see beyond their limitations and their fears and release them from that bondage of darkness. And as you come into the light, there is no illness. Everyone is healthy in the light of God. We are all healthy, whole, happy, and at one. So what we're doing as healers is trying to help people see the truth. The truth does set you free. That's why regressions are so valuable. It actually moves the energy of the person so they can see and feel the truth of what's been going on in a very kind way compared to some processes. The person is not having to be tormented or feel that torment in hypnosis. It is done at a higher level of energy, so they go through the experience without the devastation. And hypnosis is a kind way to relieve the, well, and then you are then well on your way to being a wonderful healer, because it's seeing past the blockades, the obstacles that so often people are still believing and stopping them from moving and growing into the light. So you have definitely come a long ways in your growing and spiritual growth to be able to understand that. Then there are extra tools that go along with the emotional and mental knowledge, such as Mac here has been working with pranic healing and has a wonderful book she finally figured out came from spirit, came from his wife. And learning how to use the energies to help in the physical of the person so they can have relief physically. So there are many attributes that can be accomplished in learning things like Qigong or Reiki or using crystals, various aspects of spiritual ways to raise people's essences. One of the very valuable tools Marilyn uses is flower essences because it actually moves the energy of the person. She just finished teaching a class where she was expounding on the virtues of flower essences and how valuable they are for such a reasonable amount compared to what people pay for prescriptions. It's just, I mean, it's profoundly more valuable than stopping up the energy and sealing off the problem with drugs. So it's a lot of tools out there, Nancy, that you can learn and utilize. And the most important one is to just know you're a channel from God and God is doing the work, and to ask your angels and guides for what to do next, and they'll just direct you. And with the tools that you learn, the combination's unbeatable.
Thank you.
And I know that you have some more questions.
I don't know if I really do. Mac, do you have questions?
Oh, if I think about it, probably do. I've got a question. I don't know if I can recall all this. In our Search for God study group, there was a chapter on the destiny of the body, the physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And someone asked Mr. Casey, when Mr. Casey was in trance, considering that in one lifetime we might be short, another lifetime tall, another lifetime we might be one race, another lifetime another. We've been all these different people. Says, with which body are we resurrected? And Mr. Casey's response was, that body that you've had for all time. Can you elaborate a little bit about this body that we've had for all time? Is he talking about a spirit body or a physical body? Because the question referred to physical bodies, but the answer didn't make sense from that point of view, because we've had different bodies throughout time.
And that's very true. The body Casey was referring to is your soul body. And your soul body has manifested into these different forms. You see, mind is the builder, and in different lives, the body needed to have certain form to be able to go through the lessons of that particular lifetime. And it might have been a fit body, it might have been a skinny body, it might have been an overweight body. But those were the lessons necessary, but they all came from the soul body. And that's the body that you will ascend with. And in this lifetime, when we move into the fifth dimension, which is going to be a spectacular event in history, that people will move with their physical body and their soul body into the fifth dimension for the first, actually second time. To those of us that came way back when, 26,000 years ago, did this, we can come in and out of a physical body that we choose from our soul to manifest. So that physical body you move into in the fifth dimension can be adjusted and altered by the mind again to fit your needs. So in that fifth dimension, if you had a friend who was possibly had to have an amputation on his leg, and he will be able to regrow that leg in the fifth dimension, and it will still be the same soul body, but the physical body can be adjusted to the needs of the situation. Does that answer your question?
I think it does in part, John. One of the prayers that I use is when I meditate is just I am, or I am God. And my understanding, and I'm beginning to get a feeling that this is absolutely true, that a portion of God, I don't know how to put this, but God does reside within us.
Very definitely.
And I take it that this portion of God that's within us is something other than our soul body. Is that correct?
There is a fine delineation of being all with one, but having your own personality. And in the total final picture, we will be all spirit when we have all reached home. And we will lose our personality. But for the time being, as we're going through these stages of transformation, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th dimensions, we will still have our own characteristics which define us for who we are. And there is that many parts of God. But as those people move into higher spiritual realms, their spirit will connect more and more until it becomes merged. So yes, there is the individual and there is the collective. And it's a matter of what level of spiritual growth you are at, whereas your personality might be more profound in a lower dimension, and as you grow more and more one into the oneness of God, your personality becomes less distinct and you are part of the collective consciousness because your energies have merged. Is that clear to you?
I believe so. In the Christian religion, they talk about the Christ within. I would imagine that that's the same thing that I think of as the God within.
Definitely.
The Urantia book talks about the thought adjuster. I kind of feel maybe this is still the same thing, just more words.
It's just semantics, you're right.
And in the book of John, in the Bible, in I believe it's in chapter 14, he talks about the Comforter that's to come. Again, I think we're talking about the same thing. Is that correct?
Yes, the Comforter is God. As we open up to the God within, it comforts us. Because that's the love that we were created with, but has been subdued by society.
Thank you. That does help clarify that. That's been my thinking for a long time. I also tried to, Mr. Spalding in his teachings of the Masters of the Far East talks about letting the God stand forth, or the Christ stand forth. Could you talk about that?
Yes. He is stating just another way of explaining that you, as a human being, are a vessel for God to work through, and as you release the negative energy, those things that you are not, such as greed, lust, the 7 deadly sins, let's call them, as you release those old traits which have blocked God's energy flowing through you of His peace and grace, they finally can emerge, and the energy can move through you, is showing love to those around you. And the healing that Nancy's talking about, the more she cleans out that channel inside of her, the more she can send love to those, because she's more available for it to move through her. So as you spiritually cleanse the inner part of the obstacles to that flow, whatever negativity is still not identified and addressed in awareness about, to be healed with your forgiving of yourself and loving yourself, it blocks that showing the Christ within. So the more open-minded you are, the more that energy extends to others. One of the most perfect prayers that you might be familiar with is the St. Francis of Assisi prayer. And it begins with, "Let me be a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, may I bring forgiveness." And so you see what that is doing is it's through you to others Your ego is removed from blocking that flow of energy, and you have become that channel or Christed message to others. You have become the channel or the conduit. You're an engineer, you understand conduits. And so as you become a conduit for that God's love for others, that's the Christ coming before you and within you out to others and showing that the true person that you are.
It's truly my desire to let the God stand forth. And I feel that the pathway to doing that is meditation.
Meditation is the first and foremost way to stay connected in God consciousness that you have at your disposal at this realm. And I really know that when people do this on a daily basis, the longer they meditate, the more they become in tune to the higher vibrations of spirit, listening to spirit rather than the ego within their head, which is actually blocking spirit. So you move out of your head, you move into your heart, and listen to that through meditation. The wonderful part about meditation is you can think of it as threefold: self-examination, prayer, and meditation. As you're in self-examining, what are still those qualities that I need to release that are blocking me from God? See, it is not your purpose to seek God. He's already within you. It's your purpose is to remove the barriers to God's love flowing through you and manifesting as you just asked. So self-examination in meditation can be extremely valuable to identify what still needs to be cleaned and removed and polished up inside so things move smoothly. I will just give you a quick example. Marilyn in meditation the other morning was not planning this, but she has been working on some situations in her life to be removed. And in self-examination, we told her things that she had left off her list of what needed to still be healed. And we had our own list for her. And we took her through that list of what needed to be healed, and she did her job healing those items, and we did it at the higher spiritual level. And she could literally feel the energy shift from that part that was still in the way to being moved out of the way, and freeing her energy to be less dense in her knees and releasing all kinds of blockages in her legs and knees. And she was actually walking better than she has walked in a long time because she was able to release those things still that were obstacles. And she did it through meditation with our help. So when you're in a meditative state, it's a very productive way to change those things, and asking for our help, your spiritual help to do that. We are always there. Just ask, and then we can help you with the results. And in her case, it was immediate. So you see how valuable meditation can be, not just to get spiritual answers, but to actually heal yourself. And you realize Dr. Albert Schweitzer was extremely brilliant spiritually and understood so much of this long before they ever called it metaphysics or New Age. And he said, I will tell you a secret. All healing comes from within. And so what he is saying is that we heal ourselves. And then Nancy, you asked about healing others. The more you heal yourself, the better healer you are for others, because you become that example that it can happen. So I don't know if I got off on a tangent. Sometimes I do, but I hope that meditation is the number one way, yes. And to not disregard it, but be as consistent as you can on a daily basis. And some people say 5 minutes. Marilyn was told recently in one of her meditations that she was to try to stay in Zen on a consistent basis throughout the day, which meant stay neutral in a meditative state without reacting to those things around her. Sadly, she did not pass a couple of her tests. And she was very upset with herself because she flew off the handle a couple different times, and she was not very pleased that she did not pass the test. So she's still working at it. Nobody is always successful right away. It takes many years of practice. So don't be hard on yourself when you start trying to be meditative in that state throughout your day, instead of just maybe when you are meditating at a specific time and place. But continuing that practice will put you into the fifth dimension. And it is so valuable, and that's what she's working on. And she blew it, and she knew it. And so you see, no one's perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a very good answer. It hit a lot of things. I have one more crazy question.
No questions are crazy. They're all terrific, Nancy.
How many lifetimes have I lived?
Oh, let me take a minute. But we're going to tell you about a lifetime tonight that we want you to know about too in just a minute.
Thank you.
The number that comes to me is 730. This is your last lifetime. You are finishing up bits and pieces of what still needs to be accomplished and trying to put it into balance. One of the things that we told Marilyn about, she always prepares for these evenings, and we wanted her to know to talk to you and Mac about a past life, and so she knows about this. But in telling you that you had, Nancy, a past life in England around 1850, whereby you were a little girl and your mother was a widow. You were about 8 years old when your mother became a widow. And she was very concerned about your welfare and having a roof over your heads. And it was not easy for a single woman to provide for a child. And there was a man willing to marry her. And she felt that was the opportunity necessary to provide the roof over your head and the food that you needed and the clothing. And she agreed to marry this man, not knowing that he was somewhat of a bully. And he had children, and you joined the family. Only the children, there was a boy and a girl, and they were not very accepting of your joining the family. They were a little older than you, and you were easily intimidated. You were scared already because it was a new environment, and you were wanting to please everybody and make everybody happy that you were there. And because of their bullying, they decided, well, you just they could scare you so well, they decided they would just have you taking care of them. You know, if they wanted something, they'd have you go fetch it. If they, whatever they could think of to make you do, they would just have you do it, and you just went ahead and did it thinking you were being a really good girl, and that they would like you and love you because you were so good, and you were, so to speak, taking care of them. You were like a little mother in a way. And in doing all of this, you got really rambunctious and feeling that the only value you had was taking care of others. And you were subjugated in such a way in that family that you kind of became the scullery maid, you were doing dishes and cleaning kitchens, and you know, instead of out playing with the kids. You were not really having a childhood, and they just thought it was hilarious how much they were having you work, and you were just buying it, trying to be, you know, part of the family and accepted. And it got out of hand to the point where that's still a carryover today, where there's nothing wrong with taking care of people. However, today it comes to understanding that now is the time to care about people and not take care of them. So caring for people is fine, but to take care of them becomes a guilt from the past. You feel guilty. Does that make sense?
Big time. Yes, it does. Can you tell me who these people are? Are they in this lifetime now?
Oh.
Um,
Les was the boy,
okay.
and the girl was your daughter now.
Anna?
Yeah. So this has become
Boy,
this.
that's
Does that make sense?
big time, because I'm so worried about Anna and she just wants me to do everything for her. I'm giving up my life to take care of her.
This is your lifetime to balance that. I mentioned earlier balance, learning how things need balanced in healing. And the balance is to know when it's appropriate to care for somebody and when it's appropriate to take care of somebody. And to designate that you can discern today what is the best answer in that situation, and respect yourself for standing up and saying, in this situation, I am going to care about you, but you need to do such and such for yourself. And it's important that you separate the caring for somebody from the taking care, and learning to discern today, because the difference today is you don't have to worry about a roof over your head, food in your mouth, and shelter, food, and clothing. Today, that is not a problem like it was when you were that little girl in England. So you have the ability today to make those choices from strength instead of weakness.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Les is playing on my I don't know. He told me that he didn't know if he wanted to keep living, and thought about options last weekend of, checking out. And it upset me, but I can't be everything to everybody.
You are exactly right, and in making that choice and decision, you are respecting yourself, but you're also you're giving him a gift that you don't see. When you say no, you're giving him the gift of taking responsibility for himself. He needs that release so he can say, now what am I going to do about it, so that he is now taking the reins of his own life. You see, it's very easy for someone to step in and do it for the person, but that keeps them from growing. It keeps them from being responsible and moving on in their life. And it's a very warm, comfortable place to be in your own, some people call it shit. But, it's a matter of saying, am I willing to get out of it? And sometimes you have to let people be in it long enough for them to say, I think I'm ready to get out of it, and give him the freedom to do that.
Thank you. Yeah. That really gives me a food for thought, very much so.
And that leads us to something I wanted to share with you, because as wanting to be a healer, I think you need to better understand something about guilt. Guilt has been buried in your life under fear and under resentments and under shame. And you are gaining, we are so proud of you, you are gaining such a much better love for yourself in taking care of yourself. You are growing and becoming more empowered, and we're so pleased with that. So what is really the next step to look at is guilt, not only from this life but from past lives, which is this is guilt from your childhood in this past life has been carrying through many, many lives. And it is now time to understand that guilt is a useless emotion. It just means you did not measure up to your own high standards. Does that make sense?
Very much so.
So lower your standards and love yourself even more, Nancy.
Thank you.
And the other guilt that even Mac needs to be hearing about that everybody on this planet has to really understand at some point coming, is that the ego has created, even below the guilt we're talking about, Nancy, the very bottom root cause of everybody's guilt is the ego created guilt that we separated from God, and people are trying to move back. That's what churches have been concocting, is if you move back to God, then you will not be a sinner and you will be saved and all this stuff, which is just a big fairy tale. You do not have to believe the ego's guilt that you moved away from God and therefore are doomed if you don't believe. It is just another way to change the story from what really is going on, and people are off track about that, so they still continue the guilt, and it seeps through into today because so many people still believe they're separated from God, and the ego loves that because it just has a heyday with that, and it can just cause all kinds of mental anguish, that the guilt of this, the guilt of that. Well, if you peel off all those layers and layers of guilt in this lifetime and layers of guilt from past lifetimes, which gradually people have been doing. I appreciate their hard work and when they do try to do that, down to the very bottom of believing the lie that you're guilty in the first place because you never left God. You have been part of God from the beginning of time, currently and forevermore, and it is the biggest lie that was ever perpetuated on earth. And that guilt was totally used against you for your domination in many, many ways. So, Mac, you too can release the guilt of separation from God that any churches might have placed, that you still might have a little bit, well, you know, I'm still not that great a person. You are a great person. You are a child of God. And in His being, you are the light, just as He is the light, because you are His child. And Nancy, extremely for you too. You are the light of God. And letting that guilt leave, you now can both shine brightly, knowing that there is nothing that will ever stop you from believing or keep you from believing the truth about yourself today. That guilt was definitely a sabotage, and exposing it to the light, it can dissipate, disappear, and leave forever. And both of you have now come into a salvation when you know that. When you release the guilt, salvation is what is left. And I wish you very well. Do you have any more questions? Either of you?
I have one.
All right.
Marilyn is transfigured. Is that your image that I can see that overlays hers?
Thank you for recognizing it. Yes, it is. Do you want to tell the others what it looks like to you?
It's not all that clear, but I can just basically see the outline. I can't make out I even put my glasses back on to see if I could see it better, but what I'm seeing mostly is just a white image all the way around her face.
A white ball.
Well, thank you so much. It is such a delight to be with you people, and I just love and enjoy you both to death. You are just make it wonderful for me to come and do my talking. I miss not being able to see you more, and hopefully we won't have to wait too long to get together again.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful.
Do you recommend that we try to continue our development class at my house every other week?
I certainly do. I believe, I'm not a big believer in believing, except if it's positive, because beliefs can limit you, but I believe the more you people sit in development, it's just going to get better and better, because it raises your vibrations into those places that you are wanting to ascend to and claim, and it'll just put you right in there faster if you do that.
Well, what can we do to help draw people to our circle? If we want to continue it, it seems like we've lost many of them.
Well, sadly that's happened, and I know that it's not fun to have such small circles, but just remember everything's the way it's meant to be for that period in time, except the fact that right now your circle might be less large as you had intended. The energy, you will attract what you're supposed to attract, and just accept that at the right time things will change.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, I love doing this, and I'm so thrilled you're here tonight. Matt, can you tell Marilyn what time it is, or how long she's been going?
I can't,
I can.
let me move, can you see the clock? She's been going for about 50 minutes.
All right, well, we'd like Ariel to come in tonight and give you some blessings if there was time. So we would like to do that, and I would like to say good evening and have a very pleasant evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming, John.
Bless.
Well, I'm so glad you're here this evening. I am Ariel.
Good evening, Ariel.
And I just think that you two are such great people, that you continue on the spiritual path and not necessarily get much acknowledgement for that. And I am here to applaud you and let you know how pleased I am. You see, you both have been coming on the path for a long time. Things are starting to open up, not only inside of both of you, but inside of the planet and inside of the country that you're living in. Things are changing mighty fast. Have you noticed changes?
Oh, yes.
And you are at a most exciting time in history. And you are really blessed, because as you came close to God, as He's your centering and your grounding, you will be in a state of comfort and peace and be safe, like a safe harbor, while the rest of the ugly chaos that's going on in the world around you will not touch you because of your spiritual growth. And claim that, own it, delight in it. Have you noticed the word light is in delight? Let your light shine so others will say, what do you have? My life's crazy. What's going on with you? You're not upset. You're not frantic. You're not frustrated. You know, what are you doing? And be that lighthouse for others to see. And you are both doing such a good job of that. Even if you don't realize how many people you both reach and how many people look up to both of you. I'm sure, Nancy, you don't feel that's often the case, but you would be surprised at the people that do see you. I am seeing right now at the Special Olympics the light that you shine in that experience. And people see you much differently than you see yourself. You're very hard on yourself, aren't you?
I have all sisters. It was easy.
Well, I want you to know what a wonderful, wonderful person you are. And other people recognize that. Maybe they haven't said something and so you didn't actually hear it. But I want you to love yourself more, because you are just a beaming person to others, and just beam inside for yourself too.
Thank you.
And your entourage is loving you and loving you and loving you, hoping that you will just open up and just let that love in, because you deserve to feel every bit of it. You are a wonderful lady. You do so much. You are conscientious and persevering, and you are caring, and you are truly blessed in many, many ways. And to count your blessings tonight when you go home and realize you have had an experience in your life that has been wonderful. Yes, you have had some ups and downs, but guess what? You're still here.
Yeah. There we go.
And you can smile through it all. So just know that you are a light to others, and just really acknowledge that. I want you to go home and just look in the mirror and say, Nancy, I love you. All right?
Yes, thank you.
You're so welcome. And Mac, you
Yes.
again people will look at you and think of you as being such a fine person, and you don't necessarily give yourself credit either. And you tend to be a little sober, you might say, take things very seriously sometimes. And I want you to lighten up, okay? Don't take yourself so seriously. And I know right now you have a lot of burdens that you feel are weighing on you. Make a list of them and just take the first thing first. And what's next in line, just take them one at a time and let the other things that you haven't gotten to yet, they'll take care of themselves. And just lighten up and say, well, I'm working on this one now and I'll do the best I can. And when this one gets taken care of, I'll just go on to the next. And know that you are going to live through it all, and you can actually come through it with a smile on your face and saying, wow, can you imagine those things all worked out? You see, we can help you if you ask for help. I want you to try something. If you haven't done this in your prayers and meditation, I want you to ask your angels for the most benevolent outcome for the project you're working on, if they'll help you with provide the most benevolent outcome, and then thank them for their help that they give you while you do that project. So each project does not have to be weighing you down. You have angelic help, Mac. Use it and thank them. And as you move on to the next, you'll see that the burden doesn't have to be so heavy when you ask for help.
Thank you, Ariel.
I hope that helps. And when you go home tonight, you aren't going home tonight, but you can still look in the mirror. And you can look in that mirror and say, Mac, I love you. You're doing a great bang-up job. And you're still here. You've come through a lot of experiences and you made it, and you're still making it, and you're just doing terrific. Give yourself a bunch of love. Say, I love you, Mac.
I'll practice doing that.
Okay. So I'm so glad you're both here, and you're all delightful people. Light, there's that word light again. You're full of light. Let it shine. And people, you know that song they sing at church, Mac?
It's been on my mind. I spoke up in church a while back that's more than just a little children's song. What we're talking about is letting that God light within us shine.
That's what we're talking about. You got it. Okay, you guys. Well, have a great, happy evening, and we'll see you next time. And God loves you, and I love you, and we're really all one in God, and go home with His grace and peace tonight. And we'll see you again.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you so much.
Well, I hope you all had a good time getting your answers tonight. And I just had a ball. I just think it's so cool when people want to know more about their lives and really are trying to do something about it. So my hat's off to you too. And I just want to say toodaloo.
One
Thank you so
question,
much.
Martha.
Oh, what's that?
All three of us that are here tonight dearly love David. Would it be possible to say hi to David?
Oh, we would love to tell David about it. You want to say hi to him? He's here, by the way. He's smiling. He's got a big grin on his face. And he's saying, I love you all.
Oh, that's great. We'll tell him we love him too.
Okay, well, he says he knows you do, but he thinks you're doing great. Every one of you. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Toodaloo.
Toodaloo.